discussing the debate between the extent of family diversity and the dominance of the nuclear family. Now, there are two essential components that we'd be catering over here: the debate about the extent of family diversity. किस हद तक हमारे पास family diversity है, and the dominance of the nuclear family. Is nuclear family the dominant family structure? Now, this comes under the heading of family diversity, and this there's a question that I'd like sharing towards the end of the class, through which you would have an idea if through which you'd have an idea as to how to go about using the content that we study over here today. It's not only the content that we study over here today, you can relate it to the content that we have studied earlier about this as well. So if we have a look at what's written at the right top, even though we have different family structures and households, is nuclear family still the dominant family structure? This is, I think, a really good way to put this in a simplistic manner, right? Now, when we talk about family diversity, today, with the passage of time, as we see, there are a range of different family types and structures that exist in the society today. You know, the more developed a country is, the more chances there are that there would be family diversity. That's a general uh, idea that we all carry कि जितनी ज़्यादा society आपकी developed होगी, because if we have a look at statistics, we do get to see that the developed countries that we have around, they have more of family diversity as compared to the developing on the underdeveloped countries. Number two, we'd speak about the dominance of nuclear family. Is nuclear family the dominant family structure? Or has nuclear family ever been the dominant family structure? Or if nuclear family was the dominant family structure once, does it still continue to be the dominant family structure? Question mark. Today, in many countries, family and household structures are arguably more complex, broken up, and diverse. Of course, they're more complex. It's very simple. If I put up the different type of families that we keep on speaking about, it would be difficult for you to be able to categorize or to be able to put yourself into any one family type, because as much as you think you live in a nuclear family, if you have a look at the definition of a modified extended family, you'd be like, no, wait, we do not live in a nuclear family, we probably live in a in a modified extended family. So the family structures or the household structures, they're more complex, they are more broken up, and they're more diverse, and we have statistical support for all three of these. They are more complex than they ever have been. They're more diversified as compared to the past. We have seen how there's a wider range of family types than in the past, and how there's a greater diversity. However, the extent of these changes can be exaggerated. There's a possibility that these different categories or these different types that we keep on speaking about, they are a lot of them, but the people who are actually a part of them, they aren't many, right? There's a possibility that there are reconstituted families, there are single parent families, there are homosexual families, but then the number of people who actually live in these families, these different family structures, they might not be a lot. Okay? There's a possibility. So, however, the extent of these changes can be exaggerated. Many people live in nuclear family, and others aim to do so. For example, they may hope to find an ideal partner to marry and have children with. For instance, if we talk about cohabiting couples, there's a possibility that they probably are looking forward towards living in a nuclear family in the near future. Now, taking it ahead, I'd like to introduce this term, a serial packet family, that was put forward by Edmund Leach in the year 1967. What exactly is a serial packet family? We use the term serial packet family to refer to a nuclear family. Now, the second question over here is, why is it that a nuclear family is being referred to as a serial packet family? I mean, what do we have to do with serials and serial packets over here? This, like I said, this was put forward in 1967. If we have a look at the advertisements that we used to have, if we have a look at how media portrayed an idealistic family structure, it used to constitute of, or it comprised of, a husband wife and few children living together. A husband wife few children living together, we refer to it as a nuclear family. But because this has to do with the way there were advertisements back in the 1960s, advertisements for cereal packets, right? To put it in a simplistic manner, if I talk about a Maggie noodle ad today, or if we talk about the advertisements that we usually get to see on television today, that's how they usually portray a family to be like. And the more people see families like this on the media, the more, in a very subtle manner, the more chances that people would start assuming that this is an idealistic family form. So we're talking about media representation over here. Media representations of the family often assume that the nuclear family is still the main or the only kind of family. Still the main or the only kind of family. Remember, this word still over here means, or it's hinting us that this once were a dominant family form. ठीक है जी? Up. Taking this, I hope we're all clear so far. Taking this a step ahead, media representations of the family also often assume that the nuclear family is still the main or the only kind of family. In many parts of the world, trends such as cohabitation and same-sex couple remain relatively rare. Like, you could talk about countries from the Middle East, you could talk about the more religious countries, or you could even talk about South Asian countries like ours, right? In countries like ours, you do not really come across, especially if you talk about Pakistan, cohabitation is a big no, same sex couples is a big no, right? So there are countries in the world where this might be rare, or this might be strongly disapproved of, right? For religious reasons, as it is mentioned over here. So taking this a step ahead, up, let's move on to the possibility of there being a lot of diversity, right? So agar hum baat karte hain about there being a lot of diversity, what could be the possible factors contributing towards this diversity? Number one, social change. Number two, changing social attitudes. And number three, increased life expectancy. When we talk about social change and link it with family diversity, क्या सोसाइटी के अंदर चेंज आने से आपके पास फैमिली डाइवर्सिटी बढ़ रही है, राइट? अब, if you talk about these social changes, and if I stick to the example that we have over here, with the passage of time, we have laws that have made obtaining divorce easier today as compared to the past. If I talk about obtaining divorce pre 1857, it was very difficult, and then slowly and gradually, the passage of time, a there were a lot of changes that were made in the laws that could help individuals get divorced. So when we talk about having access to divorce, right? Back then there wasn't people, it wasn't really, since it wasn't really easy for people to obtain divorce, there were more chances of there being married couples being married together, regardless of the fact कि वो empty shell marriage थी नहीं थी. Empty shell marriage क्या होती है? Empty shell marriage is when a couple is living together without any bond, without any emotional bond, right? If a couple is simply living together without any emotional bond, there's the marriage is still exists barai naam, as we may refer to it. So social changes, when you talk about these social changes, such as relatively easy access to divorce, have led to greater number of reconstituted single parent and single person households. You know what, imagine if the laws related to divorce would have been different, right? If the laws related to divorce would have been different, and obtaining divorce would have been not as easy as it is today, don't you think there wouldn't really have been a lot of single parent families? Don't you think fewer single parent families means fewer reconstituted families? Fewer divorces again means fewer single person households. See, this is a single person household, right? For instance, if there's a couple that gets married, and let's just say they have children, they do not get along, they get divorced, the one of them takes custody of the children, the other decides to live on his or her own. That particular person who's deciding on living by themselves would be referred to as a single person, right? And their household would be referred to as a single person household. Those social changes have their own contribution towards an increase in family diversity or there being greater family diversity. Number two, changing social attitudes. When we talk about these social attitudes over here, you know, the acceptance that people have started showing, the acceptance that the society has started showing towards family forms that once were not acceptable. For instance, if we talk about acceptance towards single parenthood, acceptance towards divorcees, you know, even a country like ours that is considered to be a religious country, even if I talk about how things are today as compared to the way things were, let's just say 20 years back, you know, the way a divorcee was seen 20 years back, today it is very different, right? Today there's more of acceptance towards single parenthood, right? Likewise, if we talk about the Western world, this acceptance is, there's more of acceptance, right? So when you talk about a change in social attitudes, such as greater social acceptance of single parenthood and same sex family structures, have also resulted in a structural diversity within family, right? So, one, we spoke about social changes. Number two, we spoke about changing social attitudes. Number three, another factor that we could say has contributed towards this greater family diversity is increased life expectancy. People tend to live longer today, right? The more you live, the more chances there are that you would experience different family structures, that you'd be a part of a different family structure. More than that, you know, because of there being an increase in life expectancy, along with the people who are, I mean, people today in the West, especially in the West, you'd see people who are in their 70s and they're very active doing their jobs, they're busy with something or the other, and they are living a healthy lifestyle, right? You could talk about the new American president, right? He isn't young, right? So increased life expectancy, more active lifestyle, and changes to the welfare system have created changes within family structures. These include a new style of grandparenting in which grandparents play a greater role in the care of grandchildren. And like we have discussed earlier, gone are the days when grandparents were used to be treated like doormats. Today, with the pass of time, they have more of role to play within a family. And these grandparents, many of them, they are healthy, active, and even making money. Though all of these factors, we could say, have contributed, or they have had their contribution towards greater family diversity. Do we all get this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
If we speak about beanpole families as an element of family diversity, number one, let me remind you all about what a beanpole family is. When you talk about a beanpole family, you know, today with these demographic changes that we have in the society, we see that there is, number one, an increase in life expectancy because people are living for longer. Number two, you know, even when people are living for longer, the amount of children that used to be born are has reduced, right? So there's a decline in terms of birth rate. Up, and I'm sure everyone sitting over here would agree to this.
Okay, so
There's,
what
what
I
I
was
was saying is, when we talk about these demographic changes like increase in life expectancy and at the same time a decline in birth rate, this increase in life expectancy and a decline in birth rate, you know, these are demographic changes. These demographic changes, they eventually do affect your family structures, right? If people are living for longer, that would definitely bring in a change in family structures. If there is a decline in birth rate, that is definitely going to affect your family structures. Okay, so these trends, now beanpole families as an element of family diversity, these trends have led to what Brandon calls the beanpole family. Beanpole families arise in developed societies that have low or declining birth rate and increased life expectancy. All right, now why is it that we call this a beanpole family? You know, in order to understand this, let me explain this to you in a simple manner. You know, if you talk about a family tree, if you have to draw a family tree, if we especially talk about family trees like ours, desi families, you know, it's the grandparents and then We have a lot of uncles and aunts, and then all of our uncles and aunts have a lot of children. So our family tree usually ends up looking like a pyramid, a wide one, right? However, if we talk about a beanpole family and a beanpole family, since there are fewer children being born and people are living for longer, if people are living for longer, that in other words means there would be multiple generations. Or for instance, uh, if we speak about Queen Elizabeth, Charles, William, George, we're talking about four generations over here. You know, the more of increase we have in life expectancy, the more chances there are that we'd have multiple generations coexisting. And since everyone is giving birth to fewer children, their family tree usually looks like a bean pole, a straight pole, right? And that is why we refer to it as a bean pole family. Now, moving on. Beanpole families arise in developed societies that have low or declining birth rate and increasing life expectancy, with fewer children being born. Horizontal or intergenerational family extensions are weak. Okay? So, you know what a horizontal extended family is, and this is a vertical extended family. A vertical extended family has to do with multiple generations, typically three, you, your parents, and your grandparents, whereas a horizontal extended family has to do with your uncles and aunts. So, with fewer children being born, horizontal intragenerational family extensions are weak. At the same time, high life expectancies lead to stronger vertical extensions between grandparents, parents, children, and their grandchildren. I hope everyone gets this here, taking this a step ahead. Another element that I'd like to discuss over here would be a growth in terms of lone parenthood, and this growth in terms of lone parenthood again has to do with the ease with which there are divorces happening today. Will again have to do with the changes in terms of social attitudes. And when we talk about changes in terms of social attitudes, we have seen an acceptance towards pregnancies outside marriage. And there was a time when there used to be a lot of shotgun weddings. Now, what is a shotgun wedding or a shotgun marriage? A shotgun marriage is when a couple is forced to marry when there is an illegitimate pregnancy, uh, when there's an illegitimate pregnancy found out, right? And whereas today, with the passage of time, these illegitimate pregnancies, they are accepted in many parts of the world, especially in the Western world, which reflects a change in social attitudes and does eventually affect the family structures, the demography of any society. So another striking feature of contemporary societies is the growth of lone person households. Okay? Now, what I was talking about was a lone parent family. Now we're talking about a lone person household. Remember, there's a difference between a single parent family, single parent. There's a single parent. When you're a parent, that definitely means there's a child that is there as well. Okay? However, when we talk about lone person households, we're referring to a single person. Okay? Beaumont in 2011, for example, notes that nearly one third of British households contain only one person, the second most common household structure after two-person households. Imagine third of British household contain only one person. There could be numerous factors behind this. We could link this to, again, an increase in life expectancy as well. People are living for longer, right? If one of the partners dies, the other one is still alive, probably living all by himself or herself. So over the past 50 years, one person households have increased around 2.5 times, up from 12% in 1961. Now, one person households, they have increased around 2.5 times. That's quite a number. Again, 1961 se lekar compare karte in these last 40-50 years, we've seen that there has been a dramatic increase over here. And the factors that could possibly be linked to this increase in terms of one person households are, let me highlight this for you. There could be, number one, there are more older people living alone after their partners have died. This is something that I just said. Number two, there are more middle-aged people, usually men, living alone, who have moved out of the family home after divorce, right? Why men? Because it's usually the female who gets the custody of children. Number three, more people choose to live alone. Right now, that's let's partner has died, moved out of family home after divorce, who choose to live alone. So they can there are more people who choose to live alone and can afford to do so. For women, it has been become acceptable to stay single rather than marry, and this again can be linked to the changes in social attitudes, which at one time would have been extremely difficult for financial and other reasons, which I think is pretty understandable over here. Today, with the pass of time, there has been an increase in females getting educated, and since there are more of women who are getting educated, that in other words means there are more of women who would be career focused, who would want to work somewhere, and the more career oriented women they are, the more chances there are that they'd be economically independent. Though today there has been an acceptance in terms of single females staying single, which at one time would have been extremely difficult for financial reasons and other reasons. Now these other reasons could be societal reasons. लोग क्या कहेंगे, right? Now more people have a university education today, which can often mean moving out of the family home and not returning, right? We're talking about children who leave home to get educated and then never get back because they're probably too used to living all by themselves independently. Does anyone have any question? Do we all get this?
Yes, sir.
Do we all get this? Now,
Yes, sir.
so, this trend towards more people living on their own may slow down if there's a shortage of suitable, cheaper housing because they have more of options in terms of housing. This has again led to an increase in terms of individuals who choose to live on their own by themselves. Now, I hope this topic, the debate about the extent of family diversity and the dominance of nuclear family from page number 97, is clear to everyone. Is it?
G, sir, it is.
Right?